Good evening, all my higher ed web friends from hot and steamy Vermont, and welcome to Higher Ed Live, the weekly web show for marketing and web professionals. Tune in to Higher Ed Live on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on higheredlive.com, and join the conversation on Twitter using the Higher Ed Live hashtag. I'm Tatjana Salcedo, web strategist at the University of Vermont, and your guest host for this evening's program. Joining me tonight is the excellent Joshua Dodson, Search Engine Optimization Analyst at Eastern Kentucky University and course instructor for higher ed experts. Tonight's show is all about search engine marketing, often referred to as SEO, and its role for us in higher education as web professionals and strategists. So before I introduce tonight's guest, Joshua, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors. OmniUpdate is the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. They focus on providing an exceptional customer experience to over 40,000 OU Campus CMS users around the globe. OU Campus is secure and scalable with great tools and features, plus deployment flexibility, and we know that's super important. In fact, it was voted as a 2012 top product by University Business readers. So if you need a CMS, check it out at omniupdate.com. Higher Ed Live is also sponsored by Uversity, formerly Integral, the creators of the Schools app. Will you be at NCAC or NECAC in 2013 in Toronto? I wish I was going to be there. Sign up for Uversity's happy hour event on the night of September 20th. We all know how great those events are. And if you go, have a beer for me. We're tweeting out the link right now. Next month, M. Stoner, a marketing communications agency focused on higher education web strategy and development since 2001, is presenting a 3-part web analytics webinar series. I'm already excited about it. You know the data you're collecting is important, but how do you put it to use? How do you align this data with institutional objectives? And how do you take advantage of Google's advanced features like customized reporting, event clicks, or funnels? You'll get answers to these questions and sharpen your knowledge of Google Analytics with M. Stoner's webinar series. We're tweeting out a link now where you can learn more about the series and register. Institutions can register for individual webinars or receive a discount by signing up for all 3. So now let's introduce my guest for tonight, Joshua Dodson, and he's going to give us lots of great information about utilizing search and our web marketing plans. So Joshua, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Joshua Dodson. It's awesome to be here. Thank you for having me. I am the Search Engine Optimization Analyst for Eastern Kentucky University, specifically the EKU online degree programs. So I help optimize about 20 or so different programs, and have a lot of fun doing it. I'm also the course instructor for higher ed experts courses. 2 of the courses that I teach are web analytics for higher education and search engine optimization for higher education. It's been fantastic. I've taught web analytics for higher education for a little over 2 years, and in fact, in October, for the first time ever, we're going to have 2 sessions of it, so that's fantastic, and I definitely enjoy doing that, so I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So I was really fortunate to be able to take one of your recent classes through Higher Ed Experts on SEO. I think it was the first session you taught, and I really learned a lot and got a lot of valuable insights. So one question that was kind of burning for me through the whole course was how you personally got interested in SEO to begin with.
Sure, thank you. And I really hope you enjoyed the course too. I'm glad to hear that you seem to get a lot out of it, so that's great. Personally, I became interested in search engine optimization through my interest in web development. I really consider myself a standards guy, someone who takes web standards very seriously in web development, designing web pages, things like that, and I have for a really long time. So when I first began learning about SEO, I found that it has some common ground with web standards. One of the things is that if you build a web page really well, um, there's a really good chance that you're going to be doing some of the on-page SEO tactics as well. So that was one of my first encounters with SEO kind of as a web developer. And from there, it just became really interesting because there's this whole area of strategy, right? We're trying to align a web page with user intention. So that's something that, as I learned a little bit more about search engine optimization and some of the different things that you could do with it, I found that it was really great because, yes, it has this standards component, this best practices for web development and web design, but there's this whole other, marketing side, right, which is a little bit different than that, that really focuses on the users. And Google keeps things really interesting, which helps me stay interested in search engine optimization. They're changing things all the time, so that's both a good and a bad thing. But I'm reminded, back in the 90s, in the late 90s, I would go to a web page, and again, from looking at it from a web developer perspective, I would look at the source code and I would see, they would have somewhere kind of hidden in the code, they would say like Britney Spears. That page had nothing to do with Britney Spears whatsoever, but they would, you know, put it on the page to be found because Britney Spears was the hot topic at the time. So kind of finding those little tricks, and that clearly doesn't work anymore. So don't go adding,
Mhm.
celebrities to your page just to have them in there. But just watching the evolution of search engine optimization over the years has kept it really interesting for me.
That's so funny about Britney Spears. I remember doing a little experiment. I don't know if it still works when you could type in "click here" and Adobe Acrobat was always the top results. Just really funny things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Joshua, you have this really cool job title, Search Engine Optimization Analyst. So, I'm really curious. Can you tell me a little bit about your day-to-day responsibilities at EKU, and then maybe a little bit about a project or two you've been doing?
Sure, sure. It's really a really great job that I have, search engine optimization analyst. Some of my responsibilities, as I mentioned before, I'm directly involved with about a little over 20 different degree programs. Usually, there's one or two at a time that I focus most of my attention on. So we'll go through and find a program to do a little bit of extra work. We do search engine optimization work across the board with all of our programs, but for some of the programs, we'll find that maybe we want to do a little bit extra and see what we can do with that. So I go in and I find opportunities. I do a little bit of competitive research, find out what's out there, how things are, happening for that topic, and as people are searching for that term. So there's a lot of research. I have to say, a lot of my job is doing research, and so I take that research and I apply it to some of the pages that currently exist on the website, or I find opportunities for maybe a page that doesn't exist that needs to be created. So I'll and work with several people, content developers, faculty members, and other people in the department to build some of those pages so that they're the best possible page they can be. I want them to be found, but I not only want them to be found, I also want them to fulfill an institutional objective, right? And for us, that usually translates as a lead, as someone giving us their name and email address so that we can follow up with them and see what other information they might want from us. So those are just kind of a few things I do on the organic side. I also work with the cost per click side, the pay-per-click side, right? Those are the ads that might appear at the top of a search engine or on the side of Facebook. So a lot of what I'm doing has to do with both that, the paid side, as well as the organic side. You asked about a couple projects. Well, some recent projects that I've been working on, for example, have been the police studies program website and the fire arson and explosion investigation program. Sorry, um, both of them are just really neat programs. So it's been a lot of fun working with them. So police studies in particular has been a lot of fun. Basically, this was a website that existed even before I started at EKU. So the program's been around for a little while. So going into this project, I started to do an analysis of what's currently happening with that with that police studies site. I'm looking at all of the different pieces, what's good about it, what needs a little bit of improvement, and I'm doing things like incorporating keywords to some of those pre-existing pages and improving the navigation, adding inquiry forms like we were talking about a minute ago, and just doing all kinds of little pieces here and there just to see what types of results I could get from that. And then we found that there was a really great opportunity to incorporate some faculty blogs. And this has been immensely successful. I've been so pleased with this. We've been able to work with faculty members who are already experts in their field, right? These are people that have published textbooks and all kinds of things about policing, police studies, law enforcement, these various things that they teach in their classes. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to highlight some of that knowledge to prospective students and current students, and also align our web page or our website with some of the terms that people were searching for. So we did a little bit of keyword research, found some of those opportunities, and worked with the faculty members to get some really good blog posts. Right, it's been pretty consistent for several months now. We've seen a really good participation rate with this project. So it's been really fantastic. The faculty members will write a piece, they'll give it to me, I'll optimize it a little bit more, put it on there, and we'll kind of see what happens. Right, so once it's on there, another really good benefit of this is that Google sees there's fresh, regular content on the website, that's fantastic. Not only though is it fresh, regular content, it's fresh content that's optimized for terms that people are searching for. So we now have this extra ability to be seen by this audience, and it's been really fantastic. Some of the results we've seen from it have been a 3,429% increase in Google search impressions year over year. So that helps us to get a lot more visibility for this program. I mean, that's a huge increase in search impressions, right? People are searching for something related to it, and we're suddenly starting to show up. People are starting to realize that, hey, this is a program that I might want to look into a little bit more. So that's one side of it, building the awareness, right? We've also seen a 622% increase in non-branded organic visitors to the police studies website year over year. So not only are they becoming aware of the program, they're starting to engage with the website a little bit more to learn a little bit more about it, and that's a really big increase from where we were before. So that's an awesome thing that we've been able to do, especially it's a testament really to the collaboration more than anything. And again, that's really great, right? But what we really want is to increase our leads. We want to make sure that we're getting more students to sign up for our programs. So we've seen this increase in Google search impressions. We've seen an increase in non-branded organic traffic, which is a very strong indicator of search engine optimization success, but we've also tripled our leads. So when you're looking at this time last year versus now, when you can see that we've tripled our leads, that's a really great thing. It's not only as a result of search engine optimization, but search engine optimization played a part, and it was a really strong factor in making sure that we were able to triple those leads. And we've nearly doubled new students, and we've nearly doubled our students overall year over year. So these are some really incredible figures. I mean, I'm blown away by them, and it's really a testament to the team how all of the different pieces have come into play. Faculty members helping out. We're building websites. All of the people in my department, and then with a really strong emphasis on search engine optimization and the strategy that's behind it to make sure that we're able to help bring those students, bring that interest to them and help hopefully help bring them through the door. So that's one example of a website of a project that we had that was kind of it already existed. Another example is the fire, arson, and explosion investigation program that I mentioned. This is really fantastic program. I think it's the only one in the nation, actually, or there are not many of them in the world even. So we have this really great opportunity to take this brand new program, a brand new online program, and make it known to all kinds of people that might be interested in investigating fires and arson and all kinds of things like that. So this was an example program that we were able to start from scratch, and it started with keyword research. It started with all of these best practices and working, and we were actually able to build the website around it. We were able to use SEO and the strategy as kind of a driving factor. So it's been a really fantastic process. It's still a relatively new website, so there's a lot of opportunities to still continue to grow because it was just recently launched, but we're really excited about where things are heading.
Well, I'm super, super impressed with what you did with the police studies program. That's pretty incredible and sort of an inspiration for me. I just want to remind all our viewers out there that if you have any questions for Joshua, go ahead and post them to Twitter, #HigherEdLive. Joshua, I was just this summer, I attended the EDWeb conference in Boston, and I heard a lot of talk about how searches in Google and other search engines for higher ed institutions are on the rise. And it's just a sort of long period that people, prospects go through when they're going through their college search. And it just made me wonder if higher ed institutions and us out in the higher ed world are really prepared to take advantage of this marketing opportunity. What do you think?
That's a really great question. And it kind of there's a couple different pieces really within that question. So, first of all, are institutions doing what it takes to determine what users search for? What people are actually interested in? Are they doing that that sort of research to find out what people really want? And then after doing that research, are they aligning those marketing efforts with what people need? Right. So those are two different pieces that are very important, and really two very different things in a lot of ways. And some institutions may be doing a really great job at one aspect of that, but I think that most still fall short. Things are definitely getting better. Marketing isn't a dirty word anymore. It used to be at a lot of institutions, but it's no longer the dirty word that it once was. Analytics, when you talk about that, and SEO, it's not just magic, right? People have this idea that, oh, this magic thing that happens over here, well, there's a science behind it. They're starting to realize that it's not just just magic. So they're making really great strides in their efforts, and they're doing a really good job, but the market is changing in some major ways, and a lot of the institutions are still using kind of old-fashioned models that really need to be updated. So for instance, taking a print brochure and just sort of translating it into a web page doesn't necessarily make for a good web page, right? We know that. That's something that we've seen, but some people are still thinking in terms of this old-fashioned approach, and there's still validity to some of that. However, some of it still will require actually updating the strategies, updating the way that we're thinking about how everything works together, kind of seeing the big picture, developing content strategies, social media plans, and other things that people are actually interested in. It's still overlooked, what people are doing when they get to the website. A lot of times, there will be this amazing responsive design, and then they click through to maybe inquire or actually apply to a program, and then they're sent to this off-site third party where it's like this big clunky dinosaur, and if you're trying to access this on a mobile device, it's just not going to work. You're not going to, encourage people really to go through that process. You did all this work initially, but they're stuck at this certain point. So are they, ready to take, actually find where those challenge points are and improve upon them? I've seen, even recently, some websites that are just not really taking that next step and making those improvements. They're starting to, and that's definitely encouraging. But it's still going to take a lot of work, especially because colleges are large. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of different departments. So there's a lot of greater potential there, but it's also going to be a little bit more challenging. And one of the things that I found is that these for-profit institutions are doing an amazing job a lot of the times with their marketing, with their search engine optimization efforts, and how they're doing pay-per-click advertisements and things of that nature. You go to LinkedIn, go to all kinds of different news sites, and there's a really good chance you're going to see an advertisement from one of these for-profit institutions. That's because they have a fantastic marketing team. So I'm not saying that we should all drop what we're doing and then go and rush and kind of do exactly what they're doing. But these are pieces that we can definitely learn from, those of us who are in the nonprofit sector. EKU is a nonprofit regional school, so that doesn't mean we can't learn from some of these other tactics and actually start to do some of that. And we've started to incorporate it, as I just mentioned, and we've seen some fantastic results. So one thing to keep in mind, though, is good SEO is not just about letting potential students find your website. It's about ensuring that they receive the best experience so that they can take that action that you really want them to take, whether that's an inquiry or an application or requesting a campus visit, whatever that might be. And a lot of different departments have different goals, but as long as you're encouraging that action, it's going to be fantastic.
That's a really, really great point. So you just talked briefly about this idea of what the for-profit institutions are doing with their marketing campaign, and we talked a lot about this in the SEO course. Sort of, there's organic search and there's paid search, and I think a lot of people listening out there might not really understand the different challenges that each brings and sort of the why they're both important in the big
Sure.
SEO picture. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll kind of break it down into a few different pieces. Some of the main terms that we use, especially in the SEO course. So we talk about SEM, or search engine marketing. And while there may be a little bit of debate about what exactly that means, I like to just summarize it as saying it's the overarching category of both SEO, organic search engine optimization, and cost per click or pay-per-click advertising. So that's going to be kind of the big category of what we're talking about, which is SEM, or search engine marketing. When we go into some of the different pieces of it, though, we find some nuances. So SEO, or search engine optimization, that's going to be the organic traffic. That's the earned traffic, right? You make something that's really amazing. You optimize this page that you've built and spend a ton of time and effort making it just really great, and you get this result from it, and it's going to be natural, the natural responses. Usually what that's going to involve is going to be a combination of a few different things, such as making sure that you've done your keyword research, that the keywords are in line with, the keywords are in line with what people are actually searching for. It's not just something that's about your program, right? It's about your program, but also aligned with those user interest and what people are thinking about. So there's the keywords. That's an important piece. There's the on-page optimization piece, and that's going to be a little bit more about the web development, right? Some of it will be making sure that you have a really great web page. Some of it's going to be about your navigation. Some of it's going to be about ensuring that your web page flows well. There's a lot of different pieces of it, but there's this on-page component that's really important. There's the overall content strategy. We talked a little bit about blogging. That's one piece of it, but there's a larger piece of the content strategy. There's link building, right? That's where you want people, other websites to link to your website, right? So because Google sees that as an indicator that, hey, this website right here that's being linked to, it's worth taking a second look at. I want to give that a little bit more validity, a little bit more weight as I'm ranking these web pages. So another thing, just overall generating awareness. One of the things you're going to find with the organic search engine optimization is it's the sort of slow and steady wins the race type. It's for the long term. You're not ever going to, or very rarely are you ever going to, implement some search engine optimization. Put some keywords on the page. Do some link building, some content strategy, and then a week later you're ranking #1. That's just not going to happen. I'm sorry to burst any bubbles, but that's not the way it works. It's the long-term process, right? On the other hand, you find with the cost per click or pay-per-click advertising, that's something to generate awareness while the organic side is kind of building up. You can use it even after it's been built up too. It's good for that as well. But this is something where you're going to pay usually per click or by the number of times an ad shows up on the screen, and so you're going to maybe bid on keywords, or if you're using Facebook advertising, you can specify which demographic you want, and I have to say that's really powerful. For one of our programs, we were effectively able to reach, a very, very large section of our audience with Facebook advertising because we were able to focus on these demographics and these interest areas, a little bit of mostly demographic, a little bit of psychographic, can come into play with that. But you do have to pay for this. This is something where, it's going to cost you a little bit every time someone clicks. One more piece that I want to mention about the paid side, the cost per click or the pay-per-click advertising, is going to be this thing. It's called remarketing or retargeting. This is newer. It's only happened really within the past few years, but it's really useful. It's becoming very important because have you ever noticed while you might visit a web page and then you go to a news site or something else like CNN.com or some other news site, doesn't matter what it is, and then you suddenly see this advertisement of this page you just visited, right? That's kind of like following you around the web, right? So it's a useful tool because it keeps your brand in front of people, right? They've already indicated, at least to a certain degree, that they're interested by visiting your website or maybe clicking an ad. So, keeping in front of them and making sure that they are still aware of of what you offer, that's going to be a very useful thing. Again, that's something that you have to pay for. So the paid side, the cost per click or pay-per-click advertisement, that's going to be usually when you're starting a campaign, that's going to be very useful for the short-term awareness building. SEO is for long-term. You will still probably want to continue using the cost per click and the pay-per-click advertising even after that awareness has been built, because there's also some research indicating that if your ad, for instance in Google, is at the top of a search result and you also have an organic listing on that same page, people are going to be even more likely to click through. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what you want. So that's another piece that's going to be very useful. And then the last piece that I'll mention here is going to be the conversion optimization piece. right? That's where, you're bringing people to the website, you're getting that traffic, it's been built up, these campaigns have been running for a little while, but you want to make sure that they're taking that next action. They're filling out that inquiry form or requesting a campus visit or applying to the school or doing something that takes that next step. You ultimately want to talk with them, maybe on the telephone or something like that, to make sure that you can convince them that your school is the one they really want to go to because it's so awesome because of X, Y, and Z. So that's the sort of thing. The conversion optimization, you're able to improve that page once they've already been to it, and usually that's done through A/B testing and multivariate testing, which we'll talk about a little bit more, I think, later on.
Great. This is amazing stuff, but it's also really kind of daunting. So for those of us out there that already have like super full plates, I'm sure I'm the only one, right? Um, there's a lot of this SEO stuff that's just offered by vendor now, and I've sort of often struggled myself wondering whether the best approach is to do it in-house or to use a vendor, or a combination of the two. What are your thoughts?
Sure. It really depends on your specific situation, which I know that's not the answer that you want to hear. Like, it depends, but it really does. Every school, every situation is going to be a little bit different, so you have to really assess what makes sense for you. In the ideal situation, in the perfect world, every school will have multiple in-house people working on SEO. Like, that's all they do. That would be fantastic, right? That's an ideal world, right? We don't live in an ideal world, so that's not always the case. Um, so sometimes if a vendor is going to come in and help with some of that, one of the things that they might want to do or might be able to help you with is to just get an SEO campaign off the ground, right? Get it started, kind of put it in the air and see what happens. This could be maybe a temporary thing where they're helping with a few pieces of it initially, or it could be more of a permanent arrangement where they kind of become kind of an extension of your staff, right? But there are still some things to keep in mind. Depending on what's right for your institution, and again, it really depends on the individual situation. So what's most important, though, is to make sure that the person working on SEO has a deep understanding of what the institution is trying to accomplish. That's one of the major things, that they really have to understand those goals. The clear objectives need to be established immediately, whether it's a vendor or in-house. That's something that really needs to be done. Establish those clear objectives right away, and it needs to be obvious to all of the key constituents why SEO is being implemented, right? There needs to be buy-in from all parties, really. Then the nuances of the project really need to be clarified. Sometimes, for example, if organic SEO work is being performed on some pages for a degree in middle school education, then the person who's doing search engine optimization needs to know what distinguishes that degree from the elementary education degree in the eyes of the faculty and the students. They really need to ask some of those questions and figure out what makes this program unique. What can I really focus on to emphasize this specific program, as opposed to just kind of doing some blanket terms that might be related to education in general but really has nothing to do with middle school education, right? So they need to make sure that they're targeting those terms, and it's relevant to several different pieces. The first piece is user intention, what people are searching for that might be trying to find that degree. And then second of all, what that degree actually does, right? They want to make sure that they're representing that degree appropriately and those pages in a way that is true and an accurate information. So this is simply easier to accomplish in-house sometimes, because that employee is going to have that institutional knowledge, that background, that familiarity with the culture and the structure of the university. However, as I said, that's just not always possible. So just finding the way to really implement that, either way, make sure that these aspects are apparent on the outset of the project and have clearly defined goals. And whichever way someone really chooses to go, it's best to ensure that you're working with someone who is familiar with your school, sensitive to your unique culture, well versed in SEO, and if it's someone in-house, there are a number of ways to become well versed. If you're not, Tatjana, you've taken the course, so you can kind of see there are several ways to really come up to speed in a working way. So those are kind of my uh, some of my recommendations.
So, I mean, it sounds like this is really something that a lot of us are, even if we don't do it completely in-house, obviously need to have a real strong presence in our institutions. And I'm going to guess that most schools are not going to have in the near future a resident SEO analyst or even the budget to outsource to experts. So, what are your thoughts on how us busy small web teams or even solo shops can fit SEO into our bigger strategy?
Sure, that's a great question. So, initially, one thing to keep in mind is that the goals of search engine optimization are usually going to be the same type of goals that other marketing projects will have, right? So, if you're sending out, advertisements, there's a really good chance that what you're going to do for SEO, you're trying to accomplish the same thing. You're trying to build awareness, engage users of the website, and encourage them in some way to convert, right? You want them to take that next step. As I mentioned, if it's a prospective student that you're trying to encourage to come in and learn more about your website, you want them to fill out an inquiry form or something along those lines. Smaller web teams should just start by making sure that the projects are done to standards or as close to standards as you can get that makes sense. And what that's going to do is build a really strong foundation that you can continue to build upon. Don't cut corners. Think about the big picture. As you're doing this, those are some really useful pieces. Sometimes it can be easy to think about the single project you're working on and kind of ignore what you're doing overall. So that's not what you want to do. That's not the way to really start doing some really good SEO work. You want to know what you're doing overall so that you can see how your piece relates to the bigger institutional goals. Take the time to be strategic and make those changes based on what you see. That's going to be useful. It doesn't take a lot of time to do some keyword research, some simple keyword research once you've learned how to do it. Make sure that you have that foundation in place to be able to do some of that keyword research. And once you've learned how to do it, it doesn't take a lot of time. You're building a new web page, you're creating some new content. Go ahead, do a little bit of research, have some of those keywords handy. If you can incorporate them into the content in some other ways, do that. And it's not, like I said, it's not a whole lot of extra work. If you do a little bit of extra work up front, it's not going to be a lot of extra work when you're implementing it. Start small and expand upon what you have there over time. And another thing is, it's not enough to just be data driven. It's important to ensure that you're looking at the right pieces. So spend a little bit of time up front making sure that the type of data that you're looking at is going to be the right data, right? Some pieces just, while it may seem really nice on the, up front, the number of visits to your website may not be terribly useful. When what you really need to be looking at would be something like goal conversions or the number of visits that come from organic search, non-branded terms or something like that. Just figure out what you need to be looking at for that project. So once you set those up front, it also becomes a lot easier over time.
I really like the way that SEO sort of piggybacks on top of analytics, and I think a lot of people have already made that initial investment into analytics. So I do see a lot of synergy there. So I think that while it is still a little daunting to me, I think that it can be manageable. Sort of the other side of that is this whole idea of paid search, and that does require a budget. So do you have any advice on how to convince administrators to invest resources into search marketing, including that coming up with some kind of paid search budget for Facebook or Google or whatever.
Sure. You know, before I mentioned, it really a lot really comes down to data and the right data. So once you're able to have some of that research, have some of that data on hand, it's going to be much easier to convince them. As you highlighted earlier, there's a lot of information about how the web is used as the primary source for information for prospective students. Um, a lot of external research continues to validate this. There was a 2012 study that Google did, education trends through the eyes of your consumer, that pointed out that 1 in 4 prospective students never look to a source outside the web when they're researching which school to attend and which program to major in. 1 in 4 never look to a source outside of the web. If if that data is accurate, and other reports confirm that trend, if you're not there, there's I'm sorry, if they can't see that there's that clear connection, I don't know how much how much more clearly you can point that out, other than to make that connection yourself. Go ahead and set up those goals. Make sure that Google Analytics or whatever analytics system that you're using is set up to make sure that you can see which sources are contributing most often to goal completions, and you can draw that connection. Once you are able to determine how effective these various channels might be, what you can start to do is you take that data, right? Take that goal conversion data, translate it into students. You don't want to hand an administrator a report that's just a bunch of numbers, right? You want to say, well, it produced this, and what this translates to are 200 more students as a result from. That's going to look really good. They're going to want to do more of that. I would think, at least. So one way to do it is to make sure, take a little bit of your budget. It doesn't have to be a large amount. You can set aside, we'll say $100, and just do a little bit of testing in Google AdWords or some other cost per click, Facebook advertising, something like that. Just do a little bit of testing and see what kind of results you get. Once your goals are set up, you should be able to track that effectively. And if you find that you get even one student from that $100 investment, you've made it back many times over, right? So that's something where you can start to determine what the value is for that student. You can start to figure out how much you can afford to spend on those various pieces. So simply put, you have to make the connection to what the administrators care about, what they really want to see. You use some of that external data, like that Google report and several other reports that have recently been released. Use that external data, and use some of your own web analytics data that's been configured appropriately and tracked effectively, and you can draw that connection in a way that the administrators, they just can't ignore it, because it's right there and it's useful, and they can do something with it. So that's definitely the way I would recommend to start.
Some good advice. I might follow some of that myself. So here's a question that hopefully some of our viewers might have in mind. So say you barely know anything about SEO, but you've sort of been charged with taking a first look at it for your institution. What are some really brass tacks, good ways to start the whole process?
Sure. One of the things that I would definitely recommend doing, one of the major pieces is going to be clearly defining your goals. I mentioned that a little bit before. Very, very clearly define your goals. Make sure that you know exactly what you want to have happen with this, and track that. You won't succeed if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, right? So you figure out what you're trying to accomplish with this, and then use Google Analytics or whatever web analytics program you're using to start measuring it, and set it up first. Make sure that setup is done correctly. You'll want to make sure that you've taken those extra steps to accomplish it in the most effective way, and then you can start to tie that back. So learn how to do some effective keyword research as well. That it's not as challenging as people often think it is to do some effective keyword research. If you're doing it for an entire website, it's a big task. But if you're just starting out, you're trying to get your feet wet with some search engine optimization, learn some of the basics. Learn what you need to do to start working on it. I recommend that you read as much as you can about what's effective and what's not effective. Make sure that you're up to speed on the current trends, because they change, and that's a really big thing. They change sometimes very quickly. They change. You can take a course, like the course that I teach for higher ed experts, or something where you're just really making sure that you're bringing yourself up to working knowledge in a timely fashion, but also in a way that's very thorough and comprehensive. One of the most important pieces is to just try it out. Get in, get your hands dirty. See what makes sense for your workload and for your goals. Realize that it's a process. It's not going to be something that happens immediately. You're not going to do it once and then be finished. You're going to constantly go back, make changes, update web pages. That's the sort of thing that's going to happen all of the time. You just get in there and start experimenting a little bit. At EKU, we almost always have some kind of A/B test that we're doing. Almost always we're looking at different variations. We continue to try to figure out what our audience wants. And something I've learned is that what the audience wants does change over time. What works once may not work the same way again. That's okay. We can go with it. We can work with that. Continue doing tests. Find out what's going on and what people are wanting to see. This is really obvious when you start looking at mobile users. One recent campaign that I was working on revealed different trends and mobile usage than I was expecting. I was not expecting what I saw, right? Since I was tracking it and I was able to do some conversion optimization and make the calls to action much clearer, make the web page easier to use. I actually went through 3 or 4 different versions of the web page before I started seeing results. But I went through those versions. I made sure that I was there. I was testing it. I was making sure that I was changing things to figure out what worked for that audience. And that's something that you just have to go in there. And there's a lot of experimentation that it takes. But get in there, get your hands dirty with that a little bit. And have a plan in place. As you begin, set some internal success goals that you try to reach. Be realistic. You're not going to make huge changes overnight. Remember, SEO, organic search engine optimization, is a long-term strategy. Over time, you will see results. It might not be exactly what you expect. If it's not what you expect, like I said, go back, reevaluate, make some changes. Don't be discouraged by some downward trends, because in higher ed, one of the things that I think everyone will pretty much agree on is that there's a very high degree of seasonality. Expect the ebbs and flows of data. You're going to find that there are certain times of the year where your visitors are not just they're not going to be doing the same thing that they would do at a different time of year. So expect some of that seasonality. Realize that there are nuances even between programs and initiatives. For example, I mentioned police studies earlier. So one of the things we found is that the audience for police studies is very different from our audience for occupational therapy. They have different interests, different motivations. So we have to learn how to optimize for each group and kind of match what their expectations are, and check those results to make sure that it either was effective or it wasn't effective, at all. So those are some of the things that I would definitely recommend. And Tatjana, if I could just turn the tables on you and ask you the same question. You've recently finished the SEO for higher ed course. What kind of advice do you have as a fellow, web strategist trying to make a difference here in the trenches?
Sure. So one thing that I learned in this whole process and from getting all that valuable information from you is that SEO definitely cannot happen in a vacuum. It's really, really important and critical to get all your content creators and all the people that have a say in your web content involved really early on in the process. And it's important that when you take on the whole project of creating this SEO strategy, that it's a really highly collaborative and iterative process, like you mentioned with the whole testing thing. And I think once you can stick some information in front of people and show them the measurable differences that they can obtain from the process, they're much more likely to embrace the whole concept as a culture shift, as a change in the way they do things, and develop really great habits that, like as you mentioned, not only benefit SEO, but actually make for better web content to begin with. So they're very well intertwined. In fact, I'm starting to think that the whole sort of process of determining how to do SEO is maybe just as important, if not even maybe more important than the actual SEO process itself. One of the things that I've decided that I'm going to do this year is I'm going to offer at my institution a couple workshops for the content creators, not a full-out SEO project, but just sort of get them in a room and explain to them and just sort of show them what SEO looks like and the idea of keywording and how it can benefit them, and have them get a chance to get their toes in the water and see what it's like, so that they won't be they'll start thinking that either they can go out and learn about them themselves or consult with me or other people on my team to make sure that they're doing that kind of stuff, because we don't, we're a big institution, small team, we don't have our hands on all the content. So sometimes we feel a little less empowered, and I think that's the way that we can really sort of help people forward. And the other thing that is, when you start learning about all this paid search and not paid search and nuances and keywords and all these tools out there, it can kind of seem a little daunting. But all of this can really come together, and it feeds off one another. So the things that you can learn in your SEO process can make you make better decisions about things that that don't really have a lot to do with SEO. It's really more tightly integrated than I had assumed going into the process. That's been my biggest thing. And definitely go out there and try it. Take the time and try it. So I want to thank you again, Joshua, for taking the time to chat with us and imparting your wisdom about SEO and all these great things to us. You are just a wealth of great information. And I want to thank everybody who's joined in with us tonight for being in the conversation about SEO, and those of you that are going to watch the recording as well. So finally, I'd like to invite everybody to join next Thursday on Higher Ed Live. Mark Greenfield is going to be talking all about higher ed flattening. And if you don't know what that is, you will after listening to Mark. So that's it for tonight. Thanks everybody and thank you again, Joshua.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Bye.